we're going to be doing is our drawing of our toolbox base. What we need is a piece of paper that's going to be exactly the same size as our sheet metal. So this is going to be the same size as our sheet metal. There's two ways we can do that. That is 300 by 450 millimeters. So it's a bit bigger than an A3 page. Two ways of doing it. Grab a page and we can place it there and do it in the middle like the last drawing that I did, but that means we won't have enough room for our handle. So if we actually move it to the side and we take our page, and we make sure we've lined up our page with the edge over here. So this corner is going to be in it. We can slide it down so it's right on the corner, perfectly lined up. And you can check by over here and over here that you're lined up. And then when it's in line, you can actually trace around it and have a drawing that is to scale of what our metal's going to be. Because this is checking that we know how to mark out our page properly. Before we mark anything out, we need to know how to use the rulers and equipment safely and effectively. So we have lots of plastic set squares and they're quite good at showing us where our pieces are going to be. So at the moment I've got my page on the side there, so when I finish I can actually cut off this piece here and that will be enough for me to do my handle. So I'm saving that over here for my handle for later. What we need to do when we're then going to use any equipment that's plastic, we have to check that the line that we are putting our mark on is exactly on the line that we're drawing from. So these have to be very exact. So an easier way sometimes to see it will be working on a piece of paper that I've cut to size. So I can see my edge really easily. This ruler is in centimetres, but we need to know that that is, when we're talking about 78, we're going 7.8. When if we have a ruler that is in centimetres, if we have one that is in millimetres, we know that we're going to be able to read the 78 more easily. We have to check out what we've got. We also need to make sure that the line over here is not in or out, that the line of where the measurement's starting from, this one doesn't say 0, but it's not on the edge. The edge there is not 0. We need to slide it to right on the edge of the page. Same with this one, it says 0, so it's easy to know I've got to slide that quite a long way out. If I'm using an engineering ruler, it's going to be a little bit different, because the engineering ruler, the marks start right on the edge. So I have to be very careful it is right on the edge when I line it up. If it's out that way or out that way, it's not going to be right. So we have to lean across and make sure we have it exactly so our measurements are correct. Number one thing. Okay, next thing we need to do is when we're marking anything out, we need to be making sure that we are counting our marks to be precise and to make sure our lines we draw are going to be precise. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure we know when we're doing our toolbox base that we are going to start with a measurement coming in from the end. That measurement, so when you're ready, you're going to line up your T-square or your ruler, so your 0 is on the edge and you're going to come down 78 millimeters. Now we're going to mark that 3 times. You will do all your marks in pencil, so if something's wrong you can rub it out. Okay, I always find if I've got 3 marks I can't be wrong, because if they don't all line up I know I've got to come back and redo them. But I've got to do some of these, and these ones are going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to actually start, this is actually going to start in 100 millimeters from the edge. So I'm going to do this all in one go because I'm not going to be using pencil. So I know that my mark's going to be from 100 here to 100 here. And this line for me, I'm going to draw in pink, and I'm going to draw it as a dashed line because it's going to be a fold line. So it doesn't have to go all the way across. I'm going to do a few less so you don't get too confused with too many lines later. And this line I will mark in where it's coming from. So it's going to finish here and it's finishing here. And this one We normally wouldn't mark on our page, but I'm going to tell you on here so you know it is going from here to 78 here, and I'm doing a little tiny mark coming through. That tells me, if I do arrows like this, 78. And it's referring to millimetres, unless I specify something different. We then go to do the same at the other end. I can either turn my page around, which might be easier to work with, and then do the same thing. Mark my lines down 78. Okay, I need to check that I've got it right before I come back through. So again, I've got my 3 marks. I then can, because I know that this drawing is going to be going from here to here, because our margins on the other side is going to be a 100mm margin in from the end. And remember, this page is our full page size. So I've already measured this out, so that length is 450 and that length is 300. So that's why it's easy, that's 450, and we know that that's 300 because I've already measured them and got them ready to go. So our next measurement is coming in from our sides 100 mils. At the moment, most of these lines are going to be fold lines. So our fold lines we're doing is green. So again, we come through, we make sure we have our marks, and I'll mark mine in pencil because it's a little bit more accurate than a fine liner. I prefer you to do all yours in pencil because you then are more accurate for when you scribe and use the dividers to keep your next lot of lines in place. So this one's pretty much in one place. Once I've got my 3 marks, I can come back. Now what I'm going to find this time is that all of these lines are also going to be a fold line. So again, I'm going to do all of these marks as dashes, so I remember I'm going to be folding this section when I get onto my sheet metal, and it won't be a cutting line because I won't cut these sections out. I'm just going to fold these sections. So I have to mark these carefully on each side. So I remember how big this section is, I'm going to just do a little mark on the end here to remind me that this one is coming in from this end to there, and it's 100. So it's 100 millimeters at each end. I'm not putting too much detail on this one so I don't lose track. Okay, now we're up to the section where we've now added on our 2 cutting lines that come in 2.5 millimeters from the end. So these are coming in 25 millimeters from the end, so they're going to be in that position. We now need to make sure we're adding on our lines that are going to show where the angle of the box is going to be. Okay, so if we measure down 53 from this point and come across to the edges here at 53 millimeters in from the edge after the 78, you'll find that you have got the correct angle. Now what we do first of all is a bit different. We are now, rather than drawing the cutting line, we're drawing the folding line from the angle on each of these points. And so we draw the folding line, and then we add our extra 5 millimeters out from that for our cutting line. So we'll do our folding lines first at each end. Oops, should be dots. So we'll do our dots for our folding line. Okay, so now I'm up to the next section. What I've done here is my fold lines, my 180 degree fold line. I'm going to do the same on these ends here. Remember, I'm going to have a 5 millimeter fold, which means I need to check off when I come through that I've actually come down 5 millimeters, put my ruler right on the edge of the page and start doing my dots and my marks. Remembering I'm always doing 3 marks before I dot it in, then turning around and knowing that this is going to be another 180 degree fold Takes a little bit of time to do your dots. But you need them so you know where you're folding and where you're bending and how your middle's going together. Again, we do the same on this side. It doesn't matter where you measure from as long as you have the edge of your ruler where you're making that measurement from right on the edge of that page, which will be the edge of your metal when you make this out of metal. So remembering what we're doing now is just so you know how to be really accurate with your marking out in paper, so when you actually mark out in metal you end up with just the lines you need showing and you don't have to redo it on the back side. You'll have it all correct from your first layout. Remember, if you don't lay out your metal correctly, it won't come together correctly, and that's when we have all of those folds. We're now going to be doing our cutting lines, and that means we need to make sure we've got these marked as 5 mil. So we remember when we come in, that means we need to come in from this edge exactly 5 mil as well. So that will come in 5. Oops, they'll go, we're going to go out 5 because we're going to be showing the 5 on the outside, so you won't be able to see those marks I wrote very well anymore. And so that means we're going to have a cutting line out here. And again, we're going to mark our 5 millimeters on that dot, and we will have our cutting line out here. Whoops, just drew on the ruler, not on the thing. Okay, bit of a hard one, we got the plastic. Same over here, each spot we have to be able to show our 5 mils from each of those points. So we're showing we've got room to fold the middle. So the folding line's really important that it is positioned where it is, because we don't have the fold line positioned at exactly 75. So this is 75 mils up here, 73 mils up here, and then this one here will be 73 mils as well. So our fold line's going to be the same. This line and that line will be the same distance because they will join. Once we've got those, we need to work on our tabs. Now our tabs are going to be 10 mils out from the edge. So again, we need to make sure we've got plenty of marks to show where they're going to be. And we're going to draw them as solid lines. So I might go back to the metal ruler because it works better for this job. So these are going to be our cutting lines, and I'm just not going right to the very edge at the moment because we're going to do some angles to those cuts. So these are going to be our tabs. Okay, and we're going to do the same on this side. Have marks. To show where our tabs are going to go. So we're only having tabs in this top section and this bottom section over here. So they're going to be our cutting line section. So we've got quite a lot here. We need to now work out what angle we're going to have our tabs come from. So it's been really important for us to know that this little measurement here, between here and here, is actually 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's for the tabs. So that's for your tab. Okay, we have the 5 millimeters, which we wrote over here, for the hem. Okay, so we need to remember which is our hem. Our hem is what we fold back. Our tab is what we fold at 90 degrees. What we need to do now is use a set square. And we can look at this one and get a 90-degree angle. So we're going to slide it across here. We start from the tab fold. And we move that back. And we move it forward over to here. So it's going a little bit crooked. Let's get a bit straighter. Then we're going to do the same on this side. Move it across. So we can mark that in and come back. And this time this will go a little bit across that drawing I had. Flip our ruler over, line it up, get our angle. I'll do the 2 angles on the same spot, and then I'll come back and do the 2 angles on the other degree so that I'm marking them accurately. So now we have our drawing of our map plan done. We need to also mark out what is going to be happening with each section. So again, I'm going to use a black marker to tell you. So this bit here is fold 180 degrees for your hem. So we have fold back, and I'm going to call it fold back 180 degrees, and it is the hem. So I'm putting FB in each of those spots so you remember they're spots for folding back. The next folds we do are going to be coming down this side. So we're going to have our fold for 90 degrees and our fold over here for 90 degrees, and here is a fold that is 90 degrees, and here is a fold that is 90 degrees. We can also write on here that this is our tool box base, and it is sized 450 times 300 millimeters. Okay, that will give us all the information we need in that. We're going to cut it out with a pair of scissors on each of our cutting lines all around the edges through here, and this one's been cut out. That means we've got all our folds in the right spot. We now have to make sure that this edge and this edge is going to match once we've folded it. So we have to do our fine hem folds first, where we fold it back 180 degrees, which means fold back over itself. Then we know we won't have any edges that are going to cut us. Then we're going to check that this end, when we fold it around on the side, is actually going to match the other side. So they should sit together, and they should sit together properly like that corner is. So they're the same length. So that is what we have to check before we jump onto our metal. So we've now got our handle from our leftover bit of paper that we cut off from before. First thing we're going to do is rule out and measure it so that we have got it the size the handle needs to be. We can either measure our page like that, or we can just think of it as being the handle. We can work it through, but if we do it from the corner of our page, it is going to be 300 millimeters by 88, and that's going to be our handle for our toolbox. Okay, so that's going to come from our leftover paper, and we are going to get our ruler and we're going to mark out this distance here, which is our 300 millimeters, this section here. So remember, we draw this if we're doing a drawing, but we don't need to mark it on our map plan as long as we measure it. So when we come around, I know that that section to that section is 88. That's our most important marks that we have. The next thing we need to do is to keep getting our different marks for our different lines. So we're first of all going to come down 25 mils from here. So I'm going to leave it on this page here so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so remembering these are not our lines of our box out there. So if I come down 25 mils in and mark at my dots, this is going to be a fold line all the way across. So if I just get some dots in place here, I can then come across with my ruler and just go straight into dashed lines, because this is a fold line. Okay, so that between there and there is 25. Okay, the same is going to happen at the other end. It's also going to be 25, so we need to mark that so we can get it down really quickly. Mark it through. This is an easy one to start with because these lines are just dashes, and they're dashes right to the end. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is where the ends are going to fold in. They're going to come in 25 mils as well. So we're going to come in 25 mils to here, 25, and we're going to do the same at the other end. Come in 25, so we know, and we're going to make sure this time I'm going to mark it right on the line where they intersect, so that we know where that intersection is. And they're going to be a little bit different this time because we're going to need to make sure that we know we're going to cut this end. So this is going to be a cutting line this end, and this will be a little fold line. So again, we're going to show our cutting lines as straight lines and our fold lines as dash lines. So now we've got two things in place. We've got our 25mm and our 88 handle. So we've got the key things. We've got two fold lines. We now have to work on our fold back, which is going to be on the edges here and on the end. So we're going to do our 5mm fold back on the sides. We need to make sure we come in 5mm. We're again doing our 3 marks from each side so that we know we're coming in 5mm, and we're going to be pretty straight. Then we can come back. Again, this is our completely 180 degree fold back. Do the same at the bottom because we know we're at our 3 marks in the same position. This is going to be our 180 degree fold back. And we also need to do our 180 degree fold back on the ends. So each of these spots will be 180 degree fold back. It's always better to do them before we do our final tabs. Because that will be more accurate. Okay, we're now about to mark out where we're going to have our tabs. We're coming down 10mm in each direction here, 10, and the same on the other side. They're going to be just on the edges here. So once we've got our ruler in place, we're going to get our tabs lines coming across. So the tabs will come across roughly in that section. I'm not completely drawing them to the edge, because I've got to allow some angles for them to be folded back. So the green are our cutting lines, blues, here's our cutting lines. We don't have as much room as before, so this time we're just going to use a square on this angle. So we're going to just come across and come across 30 degrees on here, and then we're going to go 30 degrees to this position, so it's very small. 30 degrees on this position, 30 degrees on this position. So it's very, very small group of error we've got here. Get the ruler lined up, come across, flip it that way, come across. Come down to this line, it's probably the easiest way to do that one. It's going to go to the fold line again. Because we're going to the fold line, it gets a little bit more difficult sometimes to get marks like that in, because it's quite small. So there's bits there that we'd need to not count, so sections like that won't be counting where we've gone off the edge. That gives us our handle, toolbox handle. Okay, so there's our toolbox handle. We also need to make sure, there should be probably another dot in there to remind us we've got to fold those sections. We'll need to cut it out. We're going to remember that we have our fold back 180 degrees, or our fold back 180, FB, FB. And this will be our fold 90, fold 90, fold 90 and fold 90. So we're marking where we've got to do our different pieces. Then we're going to get our scissors and we're going to cut it out till we end up with our box cut out. Once it's cut, we're then going to again do our fold back so it's nice and completely folded back. We've also got to do the end so it's folding back properly too. And then we're going to fold in our side pieces so they'll go together like that. And then this little tab goes around the outside and clicks onto here and clicks onto there. So there'll be two little rivets at each end where the tabs come around here, and then this whole section will rivet to inside your box.